Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you. I thought I might be here alone tonight on a cold, long weekend. My name's Jeremy, and I'm leading these sessions this month. I've got 4 sessions. So our theme for this month is the idea of identifying deceptive appearances, things that appear to us deceptively, and how our minds are affected adversely by deceptive appearances, how they cause problems in our lives, and what we can do about that. So this is a central theme, I think, in Buddhist practice and meditation traditions. And a large part of it, I think, is just identifying how these, or just identifying that these deceptive appearances are there, and then seeing how they affect us. So the analogy is often used of a person in a desert being deceived by a mirage. If you think of someone who's very thirsty in the desert and they see what appears to be water in the distance, and they're deceived by that appearance and they're walking towards it. Or even if they know that it's an illusion, they might still, because they're so thirsty, be trying to find that water. That's a good example of how our mind can be deceived by deceptive appearances. And another example, I think, is a dream state. Often in dreams, we have very strong emotions arising in dependence upon what's appearing in the dream. So you might have a very fearful appearance in the dream, and then you can wake up in a sweat because the appearance is so convincing to your mind, and you are responding to that appearance. It's obviously deceptive, so the thing that's appearing to you is not really there. So they're good illustrations of the way that our minds get deceived by things appearing to us. You can probably think of other examples. So that's what we're talking about. And from the Buddhist point of view, the Buddhist says that there's quite a lot of this going on in our lives, in our daily experience. We're often getting deceived by the way things are appearing to us. So the purpose of, or one of the main purposes of meditation is to identify that these deceptive appearances are happening, and then use our analytical mind or analysis in meditation to see how they are deceptive. And through doing that, then we can free our mind from the negative effects that they're having on us. So that's a large part of what meditation is trying to achieve, is to see how these deceptive appearances are affecting us, and to, even if we can't completely remove them, to sort of reduce the power or effect they have on our mind. So last week I was just talking generally about this idea, and tonight I'll talk mostly about attachment and aversion. So these are also major themes in Buddhist thought and practice, dealing with attachment and aversion. And these are, again, considered to be afflictive mental states that are disturbing our mind, and based on deceptive appearances. So that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. So we'll do some meditation, and I'll talk a bit more, and we'll have plenty of time for discussion and question and answer. And as I always say, if I say anything that you disagree with, then feel free to say that. And we have good discussion often in these sessions. And the Buddha was very big on encouraging people to question his ideas and his practices, and so that you shouldn't accept them until you've tested them thoroughly. So you're encouraged to do that. So we'll do some meditation now. So what is meditation? As you probably know, the purpose of meditation is to familiarize your mind with a positive state or positive object. So it's an object of mind which is going to make your mind feel peaceful. And that can include, as I said, analysis. So you're analyzing what's happening in your mind in order to, for example, see through deceptive appearances. So that's also a positive state of mind where you're clearing away mistaken appearances. That's called gaining wisdom, removing ignorance. So that's what we're trying to do in meditation. So the meditation we'll do firstly is just to focus your mind. So what we're trying to develop here is concentration. And it's the same meditation that we did last week where you're focusing your mind on your breath, just moving in and out. And then we'll do you would call this a mindfulness meditation, but what we're observing is just the states of mind of attachment and aversion. So we're just giving rise to those states of mind and just observing them in our mind. So as I said last week, I think it's helpful to think of when you're doing concentration meditation, so as we know, our mind wants to just sort of jump around constantly from one thing to the next and has trouble stopping and focusing on one thing. So we call this the monkey mind. So I think the way of subduing the monkey mind is to think of the practice of concentration as being like a rest or a holiday or a break from the constant discursive thought, your mind jumping from one thing to the other. So rather than thinking of it as trying to hold the monkey mind down, put it in a cage, you're sort of encouraging the mind to think of this as being like a break or a rest. So I think it's helpful to think of it like that. So firstly, just bring your attention to your body and observe how your body's feeling. So it's useful to sit in a comfortable position, preferably with your back straight so that you don't get sleepy. So we're trying to be alert but also relaxed. Just observe your body, how your body's feeling. Let go of any tension that you're holding in your body. Just relax. You can scan from your crown down to your feet and just check all the parts of your body are feeling relaxed and restful. And then observe your breath. Just bring your attention to your breath. Observe your breath moving in and out. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is just focus our mind on our breath without it wandering off. So think of your mind as like resting on that object of concentration. And it's just observing the breath coming in and out. So we're using mindfulness to keep the object of concentration in mind, remembering it. So the object is the breath. And then introspection is observing to see whether your mind is staying focused on the object or whether it's wandered off And if it wanders off, just bring it back, resting on the object. It can be helpful to focus on the point just under the tip of your nose, on the breath moving in and out past that point. And it can also be helpful to count the breaths. So breathing in and out is one breath. Just keep count. And then when you lose count, or if you lose count, you go back to one. Start again. So what we're doing here is just familiarizing our mind with the practice of remaining focused on one thing. So just getting our mind comfortable and used to relaxed in doing that, and letting go of the habit or tendency to want to wander around, jumping constantly from one thing to the next. So we're just getting our mind used to that and relaxing and feeling comfortable with just focusing on one thing, one neutral object like the breath. So now that we have developed some concentration, we can use this concentration to investigate our own mind. So in particular, we're going to examine the states of mind of attachment and aversion. So focusing firstly on aversion, if you bring to mind a person who you dislike, someone who, when you think about that person, it could be someone in your life or a famous person, a celebrity or a political figure or even historical figure. So someone, when you bring that person to mind, you have a negative feeling towards them, a dislike. So the idea, what we're trying to do here is just bring that state of mind or that feeling, bring it to mind and then observe it. So this is like investigation or research into our own mind, into what's going on. So you just focus on that person who you have this feeling of dislike towards. And then you observe that feeling that you're having towards them. So it might be a feeling of, wishing that they would go away, or wanting to stop them from doing something that you don't like them doing, or wishing to prove that they're wrong, wishing to criticize them. And you observe how that feeling of dislike or unpleasantness seems to be coming from the side of the person. It seems to sort of radiate out from them, this unpleasantness. So you find that if it's someone you strongly dislike, you feel like there's every aspect of them is unpleasant. So the way they look, the way they talk, the way they act or behave, the sound of their voice. So we're just observing that appearance, that unpleasant appearance. And then observing how that affects your mind, how it makes you feel. How you're responding to that appearance. So either a feeling of wanting to move yourself away from them, or maybe even wanting to push them away or even harm them, to criticize them. So this is a state of mind of aversion, where we see a person or even an object and we see these unpleasant qualities in the person, and then we react, we have a feeling, reaction towards them. And then the opposite of aversion is attachment. So with attachment, think of someone who you find very attractive or beautiful, someone who seems to have only very good qualities. So they might appear to be perfect in every way, you can't find any flaws in them, or even their flaws might make them seem even more attractive. And this attractive quality seems to be coming completely from their side. It's not something that you're projecting. It seems to be something that comes from them, seems to permeate every aspect of them. Even down to the atomic level, they might seem to be radiating this good quality. And then you observe how you feel about that appearance, the appearance of the attractive or beautiful person. So, for example, you might want to feel like you want to be close to them, or you might feel sad that you can't be close to them. Or you might feel that you want to do things to make yourself more appealing to them. Or you even might want to push people out of the way who are, you feel like, in the way between you and that person. So this is the mind of attachment. So we're just observing that state of mind and how we feel, how it makes us feel, how we respond to that appearance. Okay, thanks. When you're ready, just relax your concentration. Okay, any thoughts or questions on that meditation before we move on? Did you find that a little bit uncomfortable? It sort of feels like the opposite of meditation, where you're focusing on like a disturbing state of mind, slightly disturbing. So it's said that just observing these so-called disturbing states of mind, these mental afflictions like attachment and aversion, anger, any disturbing state of mind, just observing it without getting involved in it, it can be a very effective way of subduing it. So if you think of anger, for example, if you're getting angry, say about something someone said to you, offensive words, and so when we think about those words and anger arises, so instead of focusing on the words or the thing that somebody said, if you focus on the anger itself, just that feeling of the anger arising, so you're forgetting about the cause of the anger and focusing on sort of like the result and feeling, that in itself is a way of subduing that disturbing state of mind. So that's an interesting idea. So normally we think of meditation as trying to block out all those things and just focus on something peaceful like the breath. But you can actually focus on the emotion itself. And if you're not focusing on the cause of the emotion, just on the feeling, so it's like a mindfulness of feeling, you're just observing it, then that can subdue it. So that meditation, I think, is quite a clear, gives us a clear idea of what we're talking about with attachment and aversion. So attachment is defined as as I said, an afflicted state of mind. So it's one that's not peaceful, it's kind of disturbed. And what attachment is doing is projecting good qualities, exaggerated good qualities onto a person or an object, or it could even be certain behavior. And then because of seeing those good qualities, seeking to be close to that object, bring it closer, or get closer to it, or consume it, own it. So that's attachment. And aversion, conversely, is similar, except it's projecting these negative qualities onto a person or an object, and then seeking to push them away or distance yourself from them. And it's interesting just to observe those operating in your mind, attachment and aversion. And interesting to see how they are arising based on these projected qualities. So the idea here is that we're projecting these qualities onto the object and then reacting to that appearance. So I think it's I think when you hear about these states of mind, it can feel a bit like, because they're so familiar to us, you feel like you're being criticized. You feel like the Buddha is criticizing you, because it's so much part of our daily way of being, having attachment and aversion. I remember one journalist describing Buddhism as something like a life-denying religion. And I think he was misunderstanding this idea that attachment is saying that there's something wrong with having fun or something wrong with enjoying things. So it's important to understand that when you're trying to overcome attachment, it doesn't mean that you're trying to overcome having fun or enjoying things. So there's nothing wrong with enjoying, like delicious food, or enjoying your friends, or having, there's nothing wrong with being wealthy or beautiful or famous or powerful. So the problem here is the mind of attachment, which is projecting these exaggerated qualities onto the person or the object, and then trying to attain those things, trying to seek to get those things. But because those things are projected by the mind, then they're sort of unattainable. So no matter how hard we try, we can't attain those. So it's trying to break free from that mistaken appearance of seeing the positive object, positive qualities in the object, and then trying to attain them or own them. So hopefully you can see the difference there. So the Buddha isn't saying that there's something wrong with having fun. He's just saying that we are making our minds unhappy by projecting these qualities onto the world around us that aren't there. And then if we could free ourselves from doing that, or even reduce it a bit, then our minds are free from constantly being pulled towards things that appear attractive and trying to push unattractive things away. So that's the idea. So how do attachment and aversion cause us problems? I think that's important to understand. Because I think, particularly in maybe Western sort of materialist culture, we're taught that attachment is somehow synonymous with enjoying life. So it's important to understand the difference here between having a happy state of mind and enjoying life, and what we're talking about with attachment. So attachment is actually stopping us from being happy. So how does attachment stop us from being happy? So for example, the problem of wanting something and not being able to have it. So I think that's something we've all experienced from a young age. So the state of mind where you want something and you can't get it is frustrating, And just that feeling of wanting something, if you observe that, you can see that it's not a peaceful state of mind. It's sort of like the opposite of being content. When your mind is relaxed in meditation, for example, and it's quite peaceful just to sit there. It's quite happy just to sit there. So that's quite different to the state of mind of wanting something, where you feel like you've got to go out and get something in order to be happy. You can see that's quite a different state of mind. So that's wanting and not having. It's something we've all experienced. And then the problems of having the object. So even when you get the object that your mind is grasping onto, so whether it's a person or a physical thing, the attachment causes problems. For example, you might get disappointed in the person or the object that you've been striving to get hold of. And when you get it, you find that it doesn't live up to your expectations. So that can lead to frustration, or you might blame the person who you are attached to for not living up to your expectations, or you might blame the object, the car or the house, or for not bringing you the happiness that you expected from it. And then if the attachment is still strong, even though you've got the object, you might be constantly fearful of losing it. So anxiety can arise from attachment, even when you've got the object. So the attachment also stops you from enjoying the thing once you've got it, because you might have this constant fear that you're going to lose it or someone's going to take it away from you. You might have seen that in people who have very strong attachment to something, a person, or even a position, a position of status or a position in an organization. So attachment stops your mind from enjoying the object even once you've got it, and it can lead to that sort of anxiety of losing it. And then also when you lose the object, then that's also painful. If you have strong attachment to something, then obviously you're going to feel pain of grief, or it's going to be painful if you lose it. So this is how attachment is causing us these problems. And when you understand, or when you think of it as something that it's a quality that you're projecting onto the object, and then experiencing all of these problems because of these projected qualities. So a nice analogy is of this, I think, a mythical stag creature who runs through the forest chasing the scent of a mate, a female, and but the scent is actually coming from his own horns. And so when he crashes into trees and it gives off this scent, the scent gets stronger, and so he's sort of chasing this illusory mate. And the more he crashes, and the more stronger the scent is, and he sort of becomes, more and more desperate to find her. So this is a good sort of analogy of this state of mind of attachment, where your mind is projecting this quality onto something, and then trying to find that quality that is projected. So you might think, but aren't some things, don't some things deserve that label of beautiful or attractive? I mean, aren't they valid recipients of that label of beautiful or attractive? So you think of someone who has very strong attachment to another person and regards them as very beautiful or attractive. But then there might be someone else who sees that same person and doesn't see them in that way at all. You've probably experienced that, maybe with your friends, and someone's so obsessed with one person, and then someone else can come along and say, "Really? Yes," and they just can't see that. So this is a good example of how these qualities are projected onto the person. So if the beautiful quality were there, then everyone would be able to see them in the same way. So it's obvious that it's being projected from the mind by one person, because another person can't see it. So that's how attachment and aversion are operating. And the problems with aversion, I think, maybe are more obvious. So one of the problems with attachment is that it can appear to be sort of pleasant. So it's said to be more difficult to get rid of attachment because it appears to be somehow enjoyable. And the analogy is like a use of like a moth being drawn towards a flame. So the moth is, even though it's causing it to suffer, the moth is constantly coming back and being drawn towards the flame by this projected beautiful quality that the moth is projecting onto the flame. So it doesn't notice or can't stop coming back to the flame even though it's getting hurt. So that's the problem of attachment, is that it can appear to sort of be pleasant and can stop us from noticing that it's actually causing us problems. With aversion, it's said to be a bit easier to get rid of aversion because aversion doesn't appear to be so pleasant. So the problems with aversion, I think, are more obvious. So when we have aversion towards a person and it becomes stronger and turns into irritation or anger, then I think we can easily identify that as an uncomfortable or unpleasant feeling. It doesn't. It's easy to see that it's not a peaceful state of mind. And then the problems that are caused by anger in our lives and problems in our relationships with anger and frustration and acting out of anger and causing harm to other people are also obvious. Often something that causes us a lot of regret when we've hurt people, particularly people that we love, out of anger. So again, these are arising due to the appearance of a negative appearance arising in the mind, and then we react to that appearance and sort of takes over our mind, and we do things that we would later on wish we hadn't done or said things. So this is how these deceptive appearances are operating in our life. And so I think even just being able to be aware of them and see how they are deceptive can be very liberating. So if you just analyze the appearance and you think about how someone is appearing to be so perfect to you, and then through analysis you think about, for example, think about some of their faults. So when we're exaggerating someone's good qualities, we tend to forget about their faults. So one of the ways of overcoming that is to meditate on their faults. So everybody has faults. And another method is to meditate on the sort of nature of that object. So, for example, on their impermanence. So you think of a person who you're having strong attachment to or aversion to, if you meditate on their impermanence. So the fact that they're changing every minute, and every atom and molecule in their body is changing every minute. But when we're projecting these qualities of unpleasantness or pleasantness, we're forgetting that. We're sort of seeing them as somehow a solid, unchanging object. But when we analyze, we see that there's nothing permanent about that. They're changing in every moment. So from one moment to the next, they're completely changing. And their mind is completely changing. So that also makes it clear that these qualities are being projected by your mind. And so if you look at your mind, you see that we have this tendency to sort of put things into categories, people and inanimate objects, and we tend to categorize everything in our life into good and bad and sort of neutral, either good or bad. And we tend to create these kind of rigid or static categories. And that also creates quite a lot of problems for us, because when we're doing that, all the good things that we label good, then we're sort of trying to bring them closer. And all the things that we label unpleasant, then we're trying to push them away or distance ourselves from them. And then there's all these other things that are sort of neither good or bad that we're sort of ignoring. So again, these are all labels that we're projecting onto these things, and they don't necessarily, they don't match the reality of those objects. and those people. So you probably found that in your life where you've sort of met someone and put a label on them as being unpleasant, and then sort of kept distance from them. And then later on you discover that you know the label wasn't correct, and you actually find out that you like them. You get to know them better, and you realize that all that time you were incorrectly labeling them as unpleasant based on some first, initial appearance or conversation you had with them. So we're sort of, by doing that, we're creating these sort of rigid categories that we're constantly reacting to. And so by breaking down that appearance and seeing that these things are just sort of categories that are created by our mind, and sort of being open to how, that people are constantly changing, they can be happy one day and unhappy the next, and, in a good mood one day and a bad mood the next, and just seeing them as very much like yourself, as constantly changing, then we can break down these sort of rigid barriers we have about people. Okay, so what do you think about all that? There's quite a lot in there, I think. Attachment and aversion. Any thoughts on all that? Anyone disagree with anything there that I said there? Feel free to disagree. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, good point. So I think we sort of tend to use the more extreme examples because they illustrate the point more clearly, I think. But I think we often have subtle attachment and aversion going on all the time towards everything. And it can change, so a feeling towards a person can be attachment in one moment and then aversion in the next, because we're responding to how they're appearing to us, so it can be constantly changing. And also to, objects or environments or, even colours, we're having this sort of attraction and aversion. So the point here, I think, is just to observe that it's happening, and also to see that it's that our mind is playing a role in projecting those qualities onto those things. That they're not. When you investigate, you can't find that quality that you're projecting onto that object. Well, that's the idea, and you can investigate that. You shouldn't just accept that. Try to investigate whether it's coming from the side of the object or is it being projected by your mind onto the object. That's something we have to investigate. Because it seems very real that these qualities are coming from the side of the object, doesn't it? Particularly when we have strong attachment or strong aversion. They're completely convincing appearances.
So does attachment go to addiction then?
Yeah, I would say definitely, yeah. I would say addiction would be well, you could say attachment is a form of addiction, but if you think of addictive behavior like addiction to a substance or addiction to, a behavior like gambling, or even addiction to a person, some people become obsessed by one person and can become unhealthy and self-destructive. So those you would call them addiction, and they're based on that mind of attachment, where you're projecting strongly onto that object or that person or that behavior, that there's somehow something in that is going to bring you happiness, and so you keep trying to get that happiness from that substance or from the pokie machine, that one day it's going to bring all the money out and you're going to pay all your debts. So it's, addiction, addictive state of mind, yeah. And also addictive, I think, in the sense that it's habitual, so you get into that habit and becomes sort of stronger as you sort of feed it and encourage it. So the idea is that just by being aware of how it operates and just observing it is a powerful way of making it lose its hold over your mind. Just being aware of that and seeing how those qualities are projected from your mind and they're not coming from the side of the object. Loses its power over your mind. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I get mailed sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's just, the terminology. Yeah.
So you've got the addiction there.
Mm.
How do you remove that addiction using attachment stuff?
Yeah, so, yeah.
The cows come home, the addiction is still going to be there.
Well, if the meditation's working, then it should reduce that state of mind. Because what's happening when you're having addiction, let's say you're addicted to a person, someone is obsessed by another person, and they think, I can't be happy unless I have that person, and they're the only thing that's going to make me happy, and so that would be an addictive state of mind, I think you'd agree. So you need to examine that state of mind. And so what we're saying here is that that state of mind is arising based on a mistaken appearance. So that person is exaggerating the good qualities in the other person that they're so attached to. And they're projecting those good qualities onto that person. And they're seeing those qualities as somehow inherent in that person. So the idea is that you examine that appearance and you see how it's mistaken. So you see how those qualities can't be found in that person. If they could be, then everyone would see that person as beautiful in the same way as you do. And if they were, as I said before, the other way of doing it, of examining, is to think that they also have faults. Everybody has faults. So you focus your mind on the faults of that person. So then your mind that is seeing them as perfect sort of becomes pacified. And also seeing that this state of mind of addiction is painful. It's actually a form of suffering. So that's another way of pacifying that state of mind. So that's the idea. To see how that appearance is deceiving your mind and causing that feeling of craving. Any other comments or questions? So I think the point here is to firstly check up whether you agree with this, whether this is something that is happening in your mind. And a useful way to do that, I think, is to focus on start with a particular problem you might have going on in your life, whether it's a relationship problem or a emotional problem. If you have a particular emotional problem like anxiety or depression or something like that, difficult relationship with someone, work-related stress. So whatever it is, you start with that and think about whether that experience, that kind of unpleasant experience, the problem, is caused by a deceptive appearance, whether you're seeing things correctly the way they are, or whether your mind is somehow being deceived by, for example, with attachment and aversion. I was thinking my cat is a good example of a being who's suffering quite a lot from deceptive appearances. She's always been anxious and like the proverbial scaredy cat, and even from a young age. And we've always only been very kind to her, we've never harmed her at all. But if we walk quickly towards her with something in our hand, she just looks terrified and runs away. And she's scared of the birds in the garden, and if she you open the door and she's about to come in to the house and she hears an unfamiliar voice and she'll just bolt off into the bushes. So she's a classic example of someone her mind is being overwhelmed by these deceptive appearances of, I'm not sure what she's seeing, but she's seeing a lot of threats that aren't there. There's no one in the house who's planning to harm her. We're only kind to her and give her the best food because she's very fussy and try and keep her warm. And so, that's a classic example of the mind being overwhelmed by deceptive appearances. And she's, always nervous. And from the Buddhist point of view, in the Buddhist idea of karma, the feelings of anxiety and paranoia are believed to have come from harming other beings in the past. And her favourite pastime is killing, small creatures like mice. There's nothing she loves better than killing. So I'm feeling maybe it's her karma coming back on her, that she's, maybe previous life, she's killed a lot of creatures. Yeah, she would be if she could, but she's getting a bit old now. They're too quick for her. I was thinking another example of with the cat is that the way we tend to see our pet cat as something cute and fluffy and kind of nice, but then if you looked at a cat from a mouse's point of view, it would just be this terrifying beast that they have to be constantly scared of. So which one is the correct labeling of that object? So it's all based on perspective. So for the mouse, she's just this terrifying killing machine. For us, it's this cute, fluffy little thing. So you can see that that's projection, of my mind onto her. Of this, she's a certain way. The mouse is completely opposite. So this is a good example of how we project onto objects and see them according to our own perspective of what they mean to us. Anyway, so hopefully that's helpful. That's a big topic and a lot of a central idea in Buddhist thought. And I think it's important not to feel, I think sometimes you feel a bit sort of dejected that you're somehow being criticized, because attachment and aversion is something that's such a familiar thing and strong in our mind, that we might feel that how do you say that you feel a bit dejected or something, that we have this strong attachment and aversion going on in our mind. But I think it's just important to just recognize that it's there, that we have that going on in our mind, and see how it's affecting us. And just by being aware of that, I think it very much is a way of reducing its effect on our mind. So when you feel strong attachment, you just say, okay, that's strong attachment arising there, just sort of observe it. And there's strong aversion, I really feel strong aversion to this person, and you sort of observe that. Why am I feeling strong aversion? What is it about them that makes me feel this strong aversion? What do they represent to me? And you can just sort of observe that going on. You don't really have to worry about it, just observe it happening in your life, and observe how other people have the same thing going on. They're trying to pull the nice people close to them and push the unpleasant people away. So it's just interesting, I think, to observe, and by doing that, that reduces the, I think, strong effect it has on your mind. And with something like anger, if you observe anger as it starts to arise, you see this feeling of aversion arising, then if we can sort of deal with it or address it when it's fairly, weak or just starting to arise, then it's much easier to deal with, as opposed to later on when anger becomes very strong and it's more difficult to deal with then. So you become sort of more aware of what's happening in your mind, being pulled towards attachment and pushing away from aversion, and just observing that happening. And as you become, I think, more aware of that, then it becomes easy to sort of deal with, just sort of observing it. A bit like observing Melbourne's weather, changing all the time. You don't have to worry about it, you can just, observe it. Yeah, that's the idea. So hopefully that's helpful. And we'll continue on this theme next week. I'll talk more about impermanence next week, and how impermanence is a powerful tool, meditation tool for overcoming these kind of deceptive appearances that are having a negative effect on our mind. Thank you for listening. Any last questions or comments before we finish? Thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. See you again.